The moment that a lot of you have been waiting for has finally arrived. Welcome to the first roster editing spectacular for NHL 19. We have a lot to get to, so I want to say this first and foremost, as always. You might not agree with certain overalls, you might not agree with certain potentials, and that is fine. You don't have to. You don't have to agree with the method, with the formula that I used to decide everything. At the end of the day, every change that I made, you don't have to make yourselves. With roster sharing not being a thing, any change that you make, you would be the one doing so in your own game. So if you disagree, that's fine. All you have to do is just not do the same thing in your game, right? Fairly straightforward. Always got to get that out of the way, even though some people still be like, how is this guy only an 82? So it's still going to happen, of course. But I just wanted to get that out of the way. For those of you who are unfamiliar with how in-depth I go, I will gladly show you the roster editing spectacular document, which is currently 54 pages. There is a lot to get to, and I will be getting through everything here, from the created players to everything. So, first thing to keep in mind, right here at the top, this was started with the November 22nd EA roster update. The reason for that is before that update, there were a lot of missing AHL players. When players jump from junior to the AHL, it then requires them to sign a different waiver, to sign different paperwork to be able to be put on that team. Easy for me to say. So that is why someone like Filip Zadina was removed for a little bit. That is why I believe Cale Fleury is still out of the game. But since that update, EA have gone through and changed quite a bit. They've still added in some missing players. They've also updated a ton of contract information. I kind of helped a little bit on that front as well. So keep that in mind. You might see certain little aspects of that are like created players that you don't have to create because they're already in the game. As the second thing mentions, most players are going to be listed in their primary positions as listed on eliteprospects.com. If there's someone who's listed at center, but they should be a left wing, blame it on that reason. There were some exceptions, though, that were made. The overall format. This is the basic guide that I use for deciding player overalls. The first step is going through and recalling what EA had set up previously for... Oh man, sorry, there's so much to get to. I gotta be honest, my Elgato was glitching out for a second and caught me off guard. You couldn't see that though, because you're looking at my PC screen, so it's fine. EA released an article a few years ago where they, mainly wrote out the guidelines of what a first line forward is, what a second line forward is, and everything like that. That is what this is based off of. Everything's rounded up though with how I normally see franchise mode play out. So that is the formula in deciding what somebody should be. Are they producing like a first line forward? Okay, cool. They're an 86. Are they an elite level player? Then they're closer to a 99. Same thing all the way down. For like a top 8 defenseman, is there someone who is kind of, finally starting to make that jump from being a high level AHL defenseman, 73, 74, to now getting some AHL or NHL playing time, I should say? They'd be a 75. It's fairly self-explanatory, but again, just to explain that, that's what those ranges are. And in terms of potentials, for the most part, I keep it to how people were drafted. There are, of course, exceptions. If someone was drafted in the early second round, they might not be a low top 4 or low 6. They might have been bumped up to a medium or perhaps even higher. So again, this is the general guideline for player potentials. Doing this does result in certain players, particularly in junior, getting a better chance to at least appear in franchise mode. Obviously, if someone's a medium AHL potential, but then you bump them up to a medium 7th defenseman because they were a 5th to 6th round draft pick, they're still not going to be a future top line guy, but they might actually appear within franchise mode, which is one of the things that I try to make sure happens. Next thing of note here before we continue onward. Now, in terms of cleaning up the free agent list, you can do that, but what I suggest now at this point is going through, and I'll even show you in-game, what I suggest at this point, and this is one of the first major changes that you can make. The AI will always go on a signing spree at the start of free agency. My recommendation, go to the free agent list and take out anybody over a 75. 75 and over, sometimes 74s as well. Don't worry about Ecker. Again, I'm not sure if they're directly partnered with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, but that's, the whole Make-A-Wish kid term is there. Henry Ecker will not appear in franchise mode unless you add him to a team. So if you want to keep someone like Patrick Berglund, who was recently released there, that's fine. But I would highly suggest moving the high-level free agents over to the international teams where they will not appear within franchise. So your Mark Stewarts, your Red O'Beras, and then of course we'll get into removing players like Marian Hossa, David Clarkson as well. On top of that, I suggest doing the same thing for all of the European leagues as well. At the start of a franchise mode, the AI will dump all of the high-level players in those leagues into free agency. So Toby Enstrom, for example, will be available, Jonas Hiller, Matt Stajan. So I highly recommend that as well. That should really only take you a couple of minutes in terms of just being like, oh, okay, well, let me look at Brinas. Oh, they have Enstrom, MacArthur, and Hiller, and then just move them over to an international team. They won't appear. That's one of the main things that you're going to notice with how I've set up my rosters, is that there's a major emphasis on having the AI have as much maneuverability, to have as many options without them butchering it for themselves, because let's be honest, the AI GMs still aren't all that smart. So that is one of the big things I would recommend, would be to go through and just make sure that all the high-level players out of the free agent list, again, SHL, Liga, DEL, Extra Liga, NLA, the National League, EBEL, and the Allsvenskan, make sure that all those top players have been moved to international teams. To get back to what this document are recaps from there, although a thing to note as well, and it sucks, but I've been experimenting around with sliders a lot within franchise mode as well. Unfortunately, this isn't a miracle, set of changes. At the end of the day, I've sat there, I've used every combination of slider you can think of to try and up scoring. Odds are Connor McDavid's still not going to put up 100 plus points in a season, no matter what combination of sliders you use. I have had people say, well, oh, I use like X-Tech sliders from the Storm Bears series, and that still works for me. If you can get that to work, cool. But unfortunately, I can't suggest a slider set right now that will result in accurate scoring, accurate save percentages, and an accurate amount of power play opportunities in terms of quote-unquote realism, like what you would see in real life. It's very hard to replicate that in-game. So don't expect, because of changes like this, for Connor McDavid to be putting up 100 points. It's not going to be a consistent thing. But what you are going to see here, and again, the link to this document is in the description, but what you are going to see is for every team, we've gone through, we've made the overall suggestions. There have been potential suggestions as well. Some players will still have contracts. Just double check that stuff. It might have been something that EA has updated. But I go through literally every team. And if there's an example of someone who's on LTIR, that's one of the big things, of course. Your Marian Hossas, your Dave Bolins, who in real life are not playing, but also as well go on LTIR so that their cap hit doesn't count towards the salary cap. You're going to want to remove those players rather than just, lower the overall. Move them to an international team, get rid of them. So if you see the note of remove, that's what that means. Move Marian Hossa to an international team, because as it is in real life, his cap hit doesn't count towards the Coyotes. The organization is still paying him, but that is one thing to look out for. Oh no. There we go. That's better. Look at it. It's all perfect now. So with every team, you are going to have the examples of the overalls and the potential changes. There are also going to be instances like Jesse Gabrielle, where I will make note if a player is in the ECHL and you need to bump them up. Unfortunately, there is no, as you're probably well aware, there is no integration between the NHL and the ECHL within franchise mode. So within the ECHL, players, I believe, still don't appear, but at the very least, to make sure, you're going to want to move them over. So for this example, of course, Jesse Gabriel would have been on the Atlanta Gladiators. What you're going to want to do is move him over. And when I say give them rights or under an NHL deal, you're going to want to move them to that team. So for the Bruins, it would be Providence. You're going to want to click A and then make sure that they have Bruins rights as opposed to keep current affiliation. Free agency, of course, if you want to get rid of somebody's rights, that would be the way to do that. And that's also another common theme that you are going to see within franchise, or within this thing as well. This whole roster documentation. I will admit, I just got done playing a Huck game. I'm kind of fired up and angry. But it's okay. Urho Vakanainen has a note as well, the exemption list, and I want to explain what this is for those who do not know. In the real world NHL, there are players who, while they are signed, are on their team's 50 contract exemption list. What you're going to want to do for these players is remove the years on the contract. You don't want to remove their rights, but for example, Jared McIsaac in real life does not factor in to Detroit's 50-man roster size, the contract limit. So that's something you're going to want to pay attention to as well. This can result, if the AI makes some incredibly stupid trades throughout the first year of franchise, this can result in some decent prospects hitting the open market. It is up to you whether or not you want to risk that or know that the AI will cut some players directly off of their roster at the very start of franchise mode. So the safe bet to do at this point, from what I've seen, is to just simply go through and remove. For Urho Vakanainen, who's actually played for the Bruins this year, just move him to one of his old teams, remove that contract, of course, keep his rights on the team, but you will see that note a lot as well. So again, you have the notes here for Buffalo, guys like Bryson Martin, Devontae Stevens. Make sure you move them from their ECHL clubs to Rochester, Buffalo's AHL club. I've made notes for everything. Every single team is here, not just the NHL, of course. And for example, too, the Strome trade happened after the November 22nd update. I made the note to put Dylan Strome there in Chicago. So you can go through, again, document is listed in the description, perhaps in the comments as well, and double check everything. One other thing to note, the high elite / franchise potential debate. Me personally, I have only given one player franchise potential, and that is Connor McDavid. You can make the argument of how you want to handle franchise potential, but for me, I have franchise potential as generational talents. So for someone like Crosby and Ovechkin, it doesn't matter because they're already above the age of 25. But for Connor McDavid, I have him as a generational talent. But then your elite level talents, your Nathan McKinnons, your Mikko Rantanens, your Laines, your McDavids, not your McDavid, your Austin Matthews, that's what I was thinking of. They're all high elite. Here's the thing. High elite potentials, if they're young enough and do well enough, can turn into franchise potentials. As for as those of you who joined me on stream know, when we did the test runs on franchise, Austin Matthews turned into a franchise potential within 3 seasons. So it can happen. But if you see someone where you're like, oh, I think he should be franchise potential, you can change it if you want. That's how I handle it. I have the true generational talents. I'm not saying Austin Matthews isn't, but to me, there's only 3 players I'd probably give that generational / franchise potential to, and that is Crosby, Ovechkin, and Connor McDavid. Because, let's be honest, you could argue like, oh, well, the age and injury history with Crosby. I'd take Connor McDavid on my team over any other player in the league right now. Over Austin Matthews, over whoever else. And if you feel differently about that, you're probably lying to yourself. Thus, McDavid is that step ahead. So keep that in mind as well. You'll see for a lot of guys too, a potential range of 79 to 80. You could have that be low end, high end. You can make up your mind from there. For me, what I like to do, and this is another thing to keep in mind, and I know there's a lot to explain this to this, but if I don't explain the method to my madness, people will be like, well, what the hell? So here's the thing. I don't judge this off of one season, right? So if we look at an Edmonton, Milan Lucic is still an 80 to an 81, and some people might say like, well, that's stupid. I don't harshly grade somebody off of 1 or even 2 seasons. I look back at the past couple of seasons and slowly degrade player overalls. So Milan Lucic, say a couple of years ago, and actually here, we'll take a look. Let's let's do this. Let's take a look at one Milan Lucic, for example. If this will load, thank you very much. So Lucic, obviously, towards the tail end in Boston, was producing, at a fairly strong level. Even after he left Boston, 55 points in 81 games, that's second line level. First year in Edmonton, second line level. He was playing with McDavid, doesn't matter, second line level. Last year he starts to drop. This year, of course, hasn't been great. So he's slowly dropping. He has 9 points in 43 games. I'm not going to make him a 76, 77 fourth liner. He deserves a little bit of credit based off what he did, but he is still tailing off, obviously. So to explain that as well. If you see DUR, that stands for durability, so keep that in mind. I feel like that's fairly obvious and straightforward, but that is another thing to keep an eye out on. And for some players like Sasha Barkov, medium elite, high elite, you can't go wrong putting him there either way. So, like I said, for a lot of this, you have options. You can make this your own, essentially. But it's pretty much how it's set up. I think we've explained everything about it, mainly. So, again, keep an eye out for DUR, keep an eye out for the players on the exemption list, everything like that. Keep an eye out for players like Clark MacArthur, whose careers are pretty much all but over with. And sure, there are some players that, you might want to change, like Nolan Patrick. Do you want to leave him at a medium lead, high top six? You can do whatever on that front. But we went through every team. For the record, 2 out of 2 consistency still seems to be the worst consistency. So there is that. If we scroll all the way down here, you'll notice that we don't stop. We go to the AHL as well. You'll see a lot of notes, of course, about calling players up from the ECHL to make sure that they are there. We covered everything. Absolutely everything. So the AHL is good to go. NHL is good to go. Like I said, there are 54 pages here for you guys to follow along, bump up overalls, bump up potentials as you see fit. And again, keep an eye out for the exemption list. Aside from that, we also covered every league in the game, right? We covered every league in the game. This is why it took a while. Except for the ECHL, because again, it doesn't really matter. It's just more of a keep an eye out for these players. Although, here's another thing you're going to see me make notes of. The AI, for certain prospects, will auto-sign them at the start of franchise. If you're like me and you don't want that to happen, you have to outright remove their rights, which again, in-game means going to an AHL club, hitting free agency, and then just removing them off of that AHL club. It's kind of a shitty downside to franchise right now, but it is what it is. So whether or not it's more of a prospect like Radovan Bondra or some older players, which I'll get to, and you'll see once we get to the SHL, whose rights should not be there and haven't been there for a long time, that's another thing that we made note of. So again, whether or not it is players on exemption lists or whatever else, again, we went through everything in the OHL, a lot of players on exemption lists. Of course, I do want to scroll all the way down. Well, actually, too, another thing to keep track of, again, bumping up a lot of these prospects. In terms of deciding players coming up through the next 3 drafts, I did base it off of a couple of different ratings. I'll get more into that once we get to the created player list, which will be up next. But we took a look at draft rankings, so we have bumped up certain players that, again, unfortunately wouldn't appear within franchise mode otherwise, which kind of sucks. It really does. But that's why we go through this. That's why we double check and we give certain players an opportunity to, actually make an impact within franchise. So getting through all of that, again, look at that at your own leisure. In the SHL as well, we did the same thing. The big example here, guys like Urbaum, who still had Devils rights for some reason, which was absolutely mind-blowing to me. You'll have another example of players, getting auto-signed. I think we've pretty much covered everything. Again, I go through every single league. Of course, for like the DEL, I only factor in players that might have had too high of a potential for where they are, like if they're in an upcoming draft, to try and avoid having them be drafted. And then there's other players, like Dominic Gore still has Pittsburgh rights, but there's no way to factor that into franchise unless you want them to potentially sign him day one the second you load up franchise. So keep that in mind. Everything is covered, all 54 pages of it, and there still may be some incorrect contract information. Double check that as well. So that pretty much covers everything with the editing doc. I am going to go through every team in a moment, which sounds like a massive pain in the ass. Well, in fairness, it's a massive pain in the ass because with creative players, you can't see the exact potential that they have unless I load up the page for every single player, which sucks. So there is that. Looking at goaltenders, though, we have quite a few people. Yes, you'll see, like, in franchise, it would tell you if they were low, medium, or high. Unfortunately, here, it does not. But, yeah, so for prospects, right, for Adam Hushka here, I did not want to unassign team. Whoops. That's unfortunate, and that's not good. The thing is, though, if you do end up doing that, it's a fairly straightforward fix. It is a Rangers prospect. So at the very least, I can, show you, like, hey, if you accidentally screw up, here's what you want to do. So we'll put him back on Brinos. The thing about prospects are, for me, you get as much out of it as you put into it. I don't bother customizing appearance or equipment or anything like that. As you can kind of tell by the amount of players we added in, I just simply don't have time for that. It's something I'd love to do if this somehow ended up being like, hey, I'm the roster guy now. I'd love to do that and have everything be exactly accurate, but unfortunately it's just a bit too much. So with players like this, here's what you want to do. Adam Hushka, however the hell you pronounce his name, he's Slovakian. He plays at the University of Connecticut, right? So all you want to do when you add him in, make sure his pro team's accurate. Make sure his draft year is 2018. It doesn't matter if the prospect was actually drafted in 2018. Make it 2018, and that'll give the AI more time to potentially sign them. That way, Adam Hushka was actually drafted in 2015. If you have him and every other player that you add in as a 2015 draft pick, you're going to have a ton of prospects dumped onto the free agent list immediately. So make sure any player you add in like this who's already been drafted and already has rights with the team, make sure that it's 2018. A thing to note as well, if you're adding someone from the US, don't add states, just go USA, because otherwise then you get that little flag glitch on the draft board. So that's a massive pain in the ass as well. A couple of other things to note there. So like I said, I think I'll go through every team just so I don't have to click on every player individually to show you guys, like, oh, here's what the potential is. So that's going to be a little bit problematic on your part. Kind of sucks, but it is what it is. I mean, unless you want to guess what their potential is, whether or not it's like low, medium, or high, but still. So Adam Huska's there. Caden Primo is there, currently at a low starter. I can tell you that much. Habs fans might not be too happy about that. Hayden Hockey in as well. Mr. Nalimov, again, unfortunately, you are going to have to pause. I will explain the 74 overall for Igor Shesterkin and the 73 for Ilya Sorokin. Ilya Samsonov jumped over, who was probably the best out of the big Russian 3 goaltenders that everybody talks about. He is struggling immensely in the AHL right now. So I dropped Shesterkin to a 74, which is 1 point off of a backup at a 75. Technically, it doesn't always play out like that in franchise. So Shesterkin was a little bit better than Sorokin. I gave them a little bit more credit than Samsonov, who you'll notice through the doc or just through the video here, is a little bit lower in overall than you might have expected, but there is that. So Ottinger's stats as well. Like I said, more often than not, it's going to be a medium potential for these guys, so keep that in mind. For Jesper Wallstedt, here's another thing that you need to know. For someone like this who's underage, you can only add them to CHL teams. So if you're adding players who are coming up in upcoming drafts, what you're going to want to do is make them 18, 19 years old, add them to the team that you want, and then you can go back in, edit player, and make his actual birth year correct. So that is another thing to know. At 15, if you have Jesper Wallstedt's actual birthday in there, you won't be able to add him directly to an SHL club. So keep that in mind as well. You'll see these potentials later, but whatever. I'll show you for each one. Good old Keith Petruzzelli. So like I said, unfortunately, you are going to have to pause the video at every step because we have a lot to check. Ignore Ollie Eriksson Ek. It's a weird one, and this glitch might happen to you as well. I removed Nick Sorensen and Max Gertz rights from Anaheim, and in response, it deleted Ollie Eriksson Ek's rights from Anaheim and refused to have him appear for me. So that was cool, and it also added some 15-year-old Swiss goalie to Anaheim whose rights I cannot remove. So if that happens, just make Ollie Eriksson Ek yourself and move the real one to an international team to avoid that issue. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you, though, and you don't have to worry about it. So there's that. Another thing to note, too, for U.S. prospects, basically any non-Canadian prospects, you can just leave them as unassigned this year, and they'll show up on the draft board where they should. So like Spencer Knight will show up under the U.S. region. A Russian player would show up under Russia. So that is another thing to keep in mind. God, there's so much to get to. We get to the main skaters, and again, you can see the bar on the right. There's quite a few. Now, this year, I only added in prospects and top 2-round draft picks. I didn't add in 3rd-round picks because there was just far too much to do. Unless, of course, I had them added in last year, like Andre Altai-Barmakian. So, yeah, there's that. There's just so much. Ito Iguchi as well as someone who you might not want to add in, but we added him in for the fun of it. So there is that. You know what? In terms of the potentials, it's going to take too long. So if you want it, you're going to know what team these players are on. If you want to know what I set their potential to, you're going to have to jump ahead. I'm sorry. But I don't have it listed on the Google Doc right now as far as what I set created players' potentials to and what their stats are. So it's a little bit of a pain in the ass, but you know what? I did a lot of hard work. You can do a little bit of hard work too, or you can decide on your own what you think players' potentials should be. Now, a thing to note as well about players coming up in the draft. I'm not going to be able to say his name correctly because it's not pronounced Roddy or Ratty, but with players like this who have a couple of years to develop, if you set Roddy to an 82, as in because right now I had him set to a high elite 82 overall to try and make sure that he was the top player in the draft. He grew to an 86. So you're going to want to give it a little bit of leeway. He should still end up being the top player in the draft, though, at a 78 overall. So everything we did here, especially when it comes to prospects, I feel very strongly about that we hit the mark in terms of overalls and potentials with a lot of these guys as well, especially for the upcoming draft. We took a look at all kinds. I took a look at pretty much all the major draft rankings right now. I can't speak. I'm trying to multitask, and I'm trying to make sure I didn't forget anything. It is what it is, damn it, when you get to a video like this. I'm trying to avoid any comments. Well, what about this? What about that? I'm trying to explain everything. It is what it is. But when it comes to prospects, especially for this year's draft, I took a look at the top 6 or so draft rankings, which is, that's a decent sample size. We aggregated the rankings for where everybody is, and that's how I came up with who the top 5 is. So the top 5 who get medium elite. There are a couple of prospects in the upcoming draft that I gave high top 6s to. There's a lot there, right? So, like I said, I feel pretty confident about where I have everybody set up for the upcoming drafts and everything like that, and upcoming prospects as well, like Dylan Genther, who will end up developing, like I said, before that draft actually happens. So, for certain prospects, again, if you're not sure where, what team they belong to, might require a little bit of research on your part, right? You might not know exactly what team Mr. Sandberg belongs to, but like I said, elite prospects is your friend. All you have to do is double check that, because otherwise this video would be at least an hour longer than it's already going to be. So if you don't know that Grant Mismash is a Nashville prospect, number 1, now you do, but just look him up on Elite Prospects, quick and easy, and you will find that out, no problem. But yeah, we're only at the J's. Of course, this is this is sorted not by alphabetical order in terms of surname, but no, by first name. So we're at the J's right now. That's good, right? We got a whole lot of time left. nothing but time. And the problem is I need to stay alive for most of this to be able to show you guys just how exactly we have everything set up. Although I did just remember for every American prospect, I'm going to have to double check what their potentials are, probably via the free agent list if that works, because otherwise there'd be no way for you to see exactly what they are. I do believe Cole Lind has been added in by EA. I'm actually 99% sure he's been added in, and he has updated info on the roster doc as opposed to bothering with this. But like I said, that's the one downside for me. So if EA changes anything with draft picks, obviously there's nothing you can do. If they add in a prospect or if they update player pictures, there's nothing you can do. But you have to make that call. Matt Savoy, 2004 birthdays are not in. Have his birthday be the last day of December in 2003, and he'll be in the proper draft class. Also make sure, in fairness, bump down that overall. Shouldn't be an 82. Forgot to bump down that overall. He will absolutely be an 86 by the end of it. So, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do that live just so I don't forget. A 75 should be fine. He might end up being an 84 or an 86. Players can develop between the drafts, right? So 72, 73-year-old, 72, 73-year-olds? No. 72, 70, Jesus, I have lost my train of thought. Man, I am the best at what I do. At least a lot of people say. For players who have a couple of years before they are drafted, they can develop. That is the point, right? So you're going to want to make sure that you don't have someone horrifically, highly overrated. In the case of Matt Savoy here as well, obviously that's just a bit of fun. There's no way to know if, despite the amount of potential he has at 14 years old, if he is going to end up being worth a high elite potential or whatever. But still, you can have a little bit of fun with it. So keep that in mind. There was debate over that for a long time, somewhat, whether or not players could actually develop. Indeed, they can. So trust me, that's why I was saying with the Atu Radi thing, is that he managed to go from, I believe, an 82 to an 86 by the time he was actually drafted. So players absolutely can improve. As if I go to skaters, is that going to bump me all the way back up? Of course it is, but that's okay. We'll be fine. We got nothing but time. We're just chilling. No worries. It's all good. It's all good. Good old Noah Delamont, who, shockingly, isn't in the game by default. Actually, yeah, not shockingly, but still. So again, there's a lot. There's a lot. And in fairness to EA, of course, there's a lot of guys they can't add. They don't have the rights to the KHL. They don't have the rights to the NCAA. But damn it, that's why I'm here. To show you, hey, you might want to add in this guy at this overall. Or hey, you might be missing this high-level player. Figure that out for yourself. So there's that. At this point, we are very much into ranting and rambling territory. And because I don't have a webcam up, I can't exactly have too many long bouts of just silence and nothingness, because then people will wonder, well, what the hell happened? So there's that. And I also don't want to stick you with however long of a random amount of music it would be. So there's also that. So yeah, we're pretty much there. Sarangovic has been added by EA, but there you go. That is every single player we have created into this game. Let's go double check in the fine world of player movement if it has the player potentials listed as I would prefer. Please, for the love of God, it doesn't. Jack Hughes, high elite, right? Podkolzin, medium elite. So there's that. For the rest of them, I mean, you can kind of set it up. Matt Boldy's high top 6. You can make your own opinions from the rest of it. This kind of sucks. Trevor Zegras is medium top 6, I do believe. Who else do we have here? Alex Turcotte, medium top 6. Daniil Gushchin would be medium 9, I do believe. Cam York, 99% sure medium top 4. Very sure, actually, of a medium top 4. Cole Caulfield, medium top 4. Ido Iguchi is a medium 9. Owen Power is a medium top 4. Peter Reynolds is a medium top 6. Spencer Knight, medium elite, top projected goalie prospect in this upcoming draft. And we only got a few more. Nikolaev is a medium top 6. Who else do we have? Dorofayev's a medium top 6. Dylan Peterson's a medium top 6. Like I said, more often than not, they're going to be medium potentials. John Beecher, medium top 6. Bobby Brink is a medium top 6. Alex Vlasic is a low 4. I do believe Vlasic is indeed a low 4, as I have double-checked that. Marshall Warren is a low top 4. Got that going for him. Mastro Simone, low top 6. Ryan Johnson is a lovely low top 4. Luke Mittelstadt, medium top 4. Luke Hughes, medium top 4. Ben Brinkman is a low top 4. Ryder Donovan is a low top 6. Case McCarthy, low 4. Tyler Clevin, I believe, is a medium elite. And there is that. So I think that covers everything with all of the created players as well. So from this point, really, we're just going to go through every team that matters and show you exactly how they are set up. Let's do it. Although, granted, I could have it be nothing but silence. And in a way, kind of wish I would go with that. Because, yeah, my jaw's already feeling it. There's just so much to talk about. There's just so much to talk about. So like I said, for all of this, it's just a double check of what certain potentials are, what my rosters look like at the end of all of the editing, at the end of adding every created player and everything like that. Yours don't have to look exactly the same by the end of it. And obviously, I'm breezing through it relatively quickly. You are just going to have to pause and double check if you wanted to see exactly what something was. So there's that. Like I said, a lot of room for debate as far as what overalls are, what potentials are. You'll notice some prospects as well that have some questionable potentials. Guys like Hunter Shinkarik are at like a low top 6. That's just to give them an outside chance at potentially developing. Odds are they won't. That it gives them an outside chance to maybe turn in to a decent bottom 6 guy, 4th liner, more than anything. So keep that in mind. If I sort by potential or overall rather than potential, it is going to reset it every time. But that is okay. You know what? My jaw is in fact killing me. There's really not a whole hell of a lot left to talk about with this video. This is pretty much it. So I'm going to check out from here. I will continue to go through the rest of this, perhaps in dead silence, but damn it, something has to be done. Maybe I'll throw the same non-copyright looping track to the end of this. Time will tell. But I thank you guys for watching. I thank you guys for having an interest in this. Again, it's something crazy that I've done for years anyway, so it's not as if it's a process that's unfamiliar to me. I've been doing this for a very, very long time, so I have my formula down to how to, as to how to set this up, how to get through it in a somewhat timely manner. It still takes forever to do all the research. Lucky for you, if you were to decide to do literally everything with the way I have it set up, it is a much faster process. Obviously, the argument is there for roster sharing. People all the time are like, you should be the roster guy. And hey, that would be sick if that were to happen. Who knows what 2019 may bring, right? But at the very least, I do have, I guess, some level of influence in terms of being like, hey, here's how you might want to set things up. So we got that going for us, right? We at least have somewhat of a platform. So that's cool. Connor McDavid should be higher than a 93. No, we shouldn't, because otherwise defensive stats are way too goddamn high and he'll win the Selke all the time because of his ridiculous skating. Everything is set up for a reason. Damn it. I'm out of here. Thank you guys so much for supporting this. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you're new around here, definitely support the channel. You know what that means. I don't have to sit here and beg for likes and subs. Damn it, just do it. Check out everything in the description as well. And again, aside from the roster editing doc, really the only thing else you have to be aware of, cap friendly and elite prospects. There's not a whole hell of a lot to this in terms of going back, double checking, and getting everything set up in a somewhat quick manner and a somewhat more accurate manner. Thank you. I love you. I'm tired of ranting and rambling. My face hurts, and I'll see you guys later.
hanging by a thread, hung up on all the words you said, breaking free from this conformity that you force on me. Everything I do is one big show. It's about damn time that I take control. Put me under a microscope and watch me take control. And what's this? I finally read this helplessness. Tired of feeling like I'm upside down, so I'm gonna turn it all around. And and dear God, save my soul, 'cause it is flawed. Tired of feeling like I'm upside down, so I'm gonna turn it all around. Upside down. Upside down. Gonna turn it all upside down. And don't tell me that I need saving. Finally awake and living. Yeah. The pressure inside was building. I felt under attack, and now my mind's attacked. And I've chosen my path. I've chosen my path. What's this? I finally read this helplessness. Tired of feeling like I'm upside down, so I'm gonna turn it all around. And and dear God, save my soul, 'cause it is flawed. Tired of feeling like I'm upside down, so I'm gonna turn it
changes.
Life. Life.